Namaste. Welcome, yogi astrologers, and welcome back to the Shaman and the Mermaid. We had a 1 month hiatus since our last video, and for good reason.
Yeah, I had to have a body part removed, had a little emergency laparoscopic appendectomy surgery 2 weeks ago, almost to the day, and but I'm back and I'm grateful, and here we are.
Doesn't she look lovely and healthy and so happy? Katrina's back.
Yeah, I'm happy to be back.
Smooch. And so for this time on the Shaman and the Mermaid, this is for the time of November 26th all the way through December 11th. We're kicking off with a new moon in Sagittarius this Tuesday, November 26th. That'll be at 8:06 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We're going to actually talk a little bit about some things that are just before the new moon that has to do with Venus and Jupiter and Mars and Uranus. Let's kick off with our theme and then run down what's going to go on.
Well, it took us a while to come up with this theme because we were trying to get the point across about it's time to do it. And what we finally wordsmithed was put it in ink and pour the concrete. And we'll talk about a little bit why that is key to this particular span of time. Predominantly, a lot of it is because of Capricorn energy. A lot of planets are going to be moving into the sign of Capricorn, and Capricorn is the earth sign that really likes to get things done. So put it in ink and pour the concrete.
All right, that's our theme for the new moon and continuing through this whole cycle of 2 weeks. And let me just run down the various energies, or at least the important ones, and then we'll break them apart for you. So just before the new moon, we have the planet Venus and Jupiter coming together in the sky, conjoining. You can actually see this, excuse me, just after sunset, but it's getting a little harder here out in the mountains. And to add to that, they're coming together right at the Galactic Center. What's the Galactic Center?
It's the center of our Milky Way Galaxy, and it's in the sign of Sagittarius. And so these two planets are coming together right there at the center. And these are two benevolent planets on top of that. All the planets are very benevolent, but Jupiter is the big teacher and the expansive energy, and it's sky's the limit. And then Venus is our values and our loving kindness and our compassion and its abundance and prosperity. And these are coming together, so like big love right at the galactic center. And it's, to me, really exciting in that sign of Sagittarius, which is the visionary. So you could kind of imagine that you be the archer of the Sagittarius sign, and you're shooting out there right to that galactic center where Jupiter and Venus are, and putting your hopes and your wishes and your dreams so that they manifest and become real, and then you can put it in ink and pour the concrete.
And just as a little technicality, the galactic center, at least by NASA standards, is where there's a massive black hole. And if we look at it from the spiritual perspective, the black hole is like the great deep feminine, where all the stars, all of the things from our current galaxy have been birthed, and they circle around the great womb of potential. And so this is an awesome time for that great Jupiter love. The day after, I'll get back to the 24th, that's on November 24th, Wednesday. The day after on, that was Monday the 24th, yes.
Sunday
the 24th.
Sunday the 24th is when that's exact. At
Sunday the
Galactic
24th.
Center.
On Monday, then, Venus slips right into the sign of Capricorn, which, as Katrina said, Capricorn is all about the doing of things, the putting of things into action, the making things happen and making them solid, concrete, and real. So she aligns with Jupiter and then goes into the sign of taking that vision, putting it into ink, and pouring the concrete. Now, on that same Sunday, November 24th, we have the planet Mars, opposite of the planet Uranus. Mars being our fiery, assertive self, the one that says, let's get things done, let's go places. He's traveling through the underworld on a journey in Scorpio. And Uranus is opposite. Uranus is Uncle Uranus, the one that brings unexpected surprises, things that come up. And Uranus is in the sign of Taurus, in the sign of resources, of the body, of values, of Venus's home of love. And what do you think that Mars opposite Uranus energy is about?
Well, Mars, as you said, is in Scorpio, and Mars is that fighter and warrior and the tenacity and the power that we have in Scorpio. So it's going into, as you said, the underworld, but it's also our own underworld. So our warrior is kind of soul searching right now and looking into the dark depths of our being. And with Uranus over there in our earth sign of Taurus, opposite of it, potentially throwing some random, seemingly random, very much synchronistic lightning bolts at us to jolt us. There could be some awarenesses that come up about ourselves for good ultimately, but that can be a little bit challenging for us to handle, a little bit fearful, a little bit frightening. Scorpio energy is not always delightful. There's a lot of sting to it, a lot of transformation, which can be hard on us. I attribute a lot of my own personal experience that I had in the last 2 weeks with Taurus being the body and Uranus being that sudden, so there's my emergency appendix. And it's in that time where Mars was moving into Scorpio, so my own warrior it caused me to take a look at my own stuff, my own shadow. I questioned, why did this happen to me? Why? I'm a healthy woman. There's no seeming reason why I would have this burst like that. So it made me do a lot of deep soul searching, and I had to be my own warrior self and look at some hard, honest truths about why this would come up. So that's just an example of what that opposition of Mars, Scorpio, Uranus, Taurus could look like. It doesn't have to be as big and scary as an emergency surgery, but it could also bring about like revelations about yourself, ahas, epiphanies that are not requiring that scary surgery or something coming up like that. It doesn't have to have that kind of a catastrophic effect, but it is sudden, it is unexpected, it is like kapow right there in your face. So that's happening on Sunday the 24th too, and it's exact, but it'll have its effect for a little while as Mars will be in Scorpio for a bit more.
And as Katrina said, these two things happening on Sunday the 24th are flavoring not just that day, but the energy goes before that day and after. It's kind of like the approach of a storm. You can feel the pressure in the air as it comes, and then after it goes, you can feel the energy still persisting. And then we have the 25th, Venus goes into Capricorn, but then we're dancing back with our new moon on Tuesday, November 26th, to Sagittarius again. So this whole report is basically around Sagittarius and Capricorn energy. Sagittarius, as Katrina said, is the visionary. It's going on the vision quest. It's putting out what you believe and want to see in the world. But Sagittarius is not a sign of action. Sagittarius is a sign of the mind and of visioning and of studying. And then Capricorn says, what you're going to do about it. And they follow each other. Sagittarius says, think about it, vision it, plan it. And then Capricorn says, put your boots on, put the ink on, and pour the concrete.
Right.
So that's our new moon energy happening in Sag. And then the moon will be slipping into Capricorn about a day and a half later. So right back to making it real. Did you want to say anything else about our moon?
Well, I wanted to point out that the Venus moving into Capricorn on the 25th, Jupiter will still be in Sagittarius, as you said, but they're still conjunct. They're still very close to each other, but they're straddling these two fences. So on that first day that we talked about them being in the galactic center, they're both in Sagittarius. Then Venus slips on over into Capricorn, bringing in a whole other energy while they're together. So you move from both of them being in a fire sign to one of them being in a fire sign and one of them being in an earth sign. And so you have this double element power coming together they're still in unification. They're still working together. They're still side by side, but there's a fence between them now. And one is in Sag and one is in Capricorn, starting on that 25th of November. So there's an extra element moving into their power. And if you remember in Greek mythology, Jupiter is Zeus, Venus is Aphrodite. Aphrodite is the daughter of Zeus, and she is her own divine goddess in her own right, and often has challenged her father to his power, who is the god of all the gods. And here they're coming together, bringing their forces together, so they're a unified force in this way. And there's much magic aloof with these two together.
I like that, the magic.
Yeah.
As you were saying this, as Venus in the earth sign and Jupiter in the fire sign, it's kind of like a smelter making a sword, like the fire, but then you put it into action, or a potter on the wheel making something happen in real time.
Right, that's good.
So it's making that vision into something real. The next day, or 2 days later, after Venus goes into Capricorn and then after the new moon, we have Neptune going direct. Neptune has been retrograde since the summer solstice at June 21st. So it's been retrograde for 5 months. That's a long time. It's one of the longest retrograding planets, Pluto being the longest. And it's taking forward motion, though it's not like Mercury. When Mercury goes retrograde and then direct, it's a pretty sudden shift of energies because Mercury's moving fast. Neptune is like a big giant iceberg out on the ocean, slowly turning the other way. And while it may not be instantly noticeable, it's a huge shift in the energies. Neptune is our spirituality. It's also that dreams that we've been calling in. Neptune has been in its home sign of Pisces. And so it's been particularly maybe feeling like dreamy or unreal. Maybe through this past 5 months, it's been a combination of feeling like something's possible, I'm dreaming it, and then your reality feels kind of mixed up and messed up, and the dream world's coming in and out, and you can't quite solidify your vision. And now it's going forward.
And if you've ever seen one of those big paddle boats take a turn, and the paddle has been going forward, in this case it's been going backwards, and now it's going to stop and it has to switch gears, and the momentum has been like this, and now it has to go opposite, and it's kind of chaotic in that turn, in that switch of gears. So for that time around the 27th, moving into Thanksgiving on the 28th, there might be like, whoa, this is really weird, but in a really cool way, because Neptune is, like you said, the dream time, the imagination. You might feel your wheels turning back into forward motion and getting your feet underneath you, or in this case your flippers, so that you can begin to move back forward into that really beautiful imaginative quality that we all have. Our creative genius comes forth again. It's been taking a little time out, which may have been looking like escapism, denial, maybe insomnia for these last 5 months in that retrograde. It also could have looked like a time where we were able to iron out some of the mystical and magical and get a closer look at it. Retrograde will let us do that too. I'm excited for Neptune to go forward because I feel that's, if you think of the mythology again, it's Poseidon, and the Poseidon reigns the horses, the 5 senses, and the horses represent those 5 senses, and they come rearing out of the water, and they're just beautiful horses, and he's got them all in control. So when he's direct, our senses come on, and the feeling of charge comes through us, and we've got that wild imagination flowing again. So I get really excited about that.
Cool. Nice work with the Neptune
Oh,
horse.
the mermaid.
Yeah. I also like the paddle boat illusion, a little Mark Twain there.
Yeah, little Mark Twain.
Yeah, Mark Twain. He's kind of a Capricorn Neptune type person.
Totally.
So Neptune direct on November 27th, and Neptune will be direct for 7 months and then retrograde again. So Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, usually with the sun sign, meaning sun actually just went into the sign of Sagittarius on November 23rd. It'll be there up through the solstice
Happy birthday, all Sages.
Happy birthday, Sages. Truth, nature, and vision. Thanksgiving is a Sagittarian holiday. It falls within that time, and it's ruled by Jupiter. And it has to do with the idea of abundance and gratitude, which are Jupiterian or Sagittarian principles. Believing that there's abundance for all, that Mother Nature provides, and showing gratitude and ceremony and honoring for that is a beautiful way to give that thanks back. And not only thanks to the physical world, but also to the spirit world is a possibility. And on that day, which I know many people will be gathering with families or friends or some time of reflection as well, there's a lot of energy playing out. One is Mercury is going to trine Neptune, the one that just went direct.
Yay!
And the second thing happening virtually at the same time is Venus and the Moon conjunct in the sign of Capricorn will trine Uranus. Trines are these harmonious possible energies that come forth. Did you want to talk about either one of those?
Well, I think this is grand news because we're at a time, like you said, where we gather with family, and sometimes that's not always easy. And so having trines, really positive, good, big trines, especially Venus and Mercury trining with these big outer planets of Neptune and Uranus, bring in a lot of hope for smooth sailing at the dinner table, smooth sailing around the kitchen preparing the meal, smooth sailing sitting around the television set watching those football games. That can sometimes get a little arduous because you're biting your tongue, you're getting a little defensive of your philosophies and values because they're not in agreement with your uncle sitting over there that maybe has a completely different standpoint, but he's here too. And it just is sometimes awkward. Family is beautiful and they're our tribe, but we don't always align with each other's values. Well, this particular lineup is giving a lot of room for some ease to flow in that way. Mercury, of course, is communication, and it's being very harmonious with Neptune, as we said, is that kind of dreamlike, bigger picture spiritual aspect. So I feel like there's a lot of room for communication about some spiritual qualities that maybe we don't always share, but at this particular time it could be really harmonious to present them, and they could be swallowed very easily by the people who don't always agree with that. So I'm looking forward to that piece of it. And then Venus in trine with Uranus, to me, that's bringing in the love and the abundance and the compassion. And then that Uncle Uranus wild card, there's a harmonious trite. So that means there could be some really great sparks of new relationships coming in, or communication goes well, or the meal goes well. Just a lot of potential for goodness to happen. The trine gives that strike to go in favor as opposed to going awry and causing a big fire or something. So a lot of good there on that day. And the moon as well. The moon, as Michael said, is going to be right next to Venus in Capricorn. So she moves from her new moon phase in Sagittarius on the 26th. By Thanksgiving on the 28th, she's nestled up. And I feel like the moon, Chandra, is like little sister to Venus. Venus is her big sister, and they're together at this time. And this is our inner child, and this is our voluptuous and our abundant self, saddled up together with that big potential strike of goodness coming our way. So this is a lot of room for the little person inside of us, that little, maybe even wounded child, having a chance to get some of those wounds healed in the comfort of her big sister right next to her. I want to back up the truck though. 2 days earlier, Venus is squaring Chiron. So talking about moons. On the new moon, at the same time that, it's sitting there in the sign of Sagittarius. So your inner child, the way you talk to yourself internally, is in that sign of vision and the sign of truth. You're also sitting there in that same time with the cosmos saying, and you're going to have a little bit of a challenge with that wound. So use the moon sitting in the sign of truth to help that heart wound that you have squaring off. So let some truth be a salve to that, would be my my offering as a way to handle that, because it's not always easy when our heart wounds come up and our inner child is in its little shell. Sometimes we get emotionally reactive, we curl in, we cry, we get defensive, we blame everybody else. It couldn't possibly be anything that we need to look at as a truth. And all the cosmology is saying, actually, there could be a lot of things you could look at in the way of what's a truth for you to help heal that wound.
All right, that's on the same day as the new moon.
26.
And I think maybe the last big thing to talk about is on December 2nd is when Jupiter then moves into the sign of Capricorn. It's this whole dance, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Sagittarius, Capricorn. Jupiter going in there is a huge shift. Jupiter enters a new sign once a year, once every 12 months about. And so it's been in Sagittarius since last November.
It's home sign.
It's home sign.
It's really been happy here.
And now it's going into Capricorn, which is Saturn's home sign. So it's going to Saturn's house. And Saturn is the rule maker and the one that says, are you in right way? Are your visions and truths in alignment with the truths of the universe? Have you been doing things that are karmically good for the planet, for the people, for your own heart? And it's checking in with Jupiter. And Jupiter hopefully is being like, yep. Or if it's not, it said, we got to correct some things here. We're actually marching towards the big alignment in January that persists throughout the whole year of 2020. But the first big alignment has to do with Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. That's January 12th. I don't want to go too much into that one because we'll have time in future reports. But then in the course of the next couple months, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto will all come in very close proximity in Capricorn for some big check-ins, and it's some endings of some big cycles. Jupiter and Saturn come together once every 20 years, and Saturn and Pluto come together once every 38 years, and so these are some big cycles.
Coming together, one of our favorite astrologers, his name is Timothy Halloran, and he has Rasa Leela Astrology, and I invite you to check him out. He's beautiful. He's coined 2020 as the Roaring 20s because of this exact alignment of Pluto and Saturn and Jupiter all coming together in the sign of Capricorn, which again is that do it, get it done, make some permanent changes, or at least some big long-term effect changes for yourself, for the planet, for the collective. So we're going to see a lot of shift and change coming up in these Roaring 20s.
Good
for
mention
sure.
there.
Yeah.
And check out Timothy.
And at that time, when Jupiter moves in on December 2nd into Capricorn, we're now going to have a whole party in Capricorn at that point. You're going to have Jupiter, Mercury, Venus, Pluto, and Saturn. Did I forget anybody?
By the end of December, you'll have the sun in there as well.
There you go.
And
That's
the
a
South
lot.
Node.
That's a lot. That's the Roaring 20s in Capricorn. And Capricorn, like we said, is get it done. It's putting it in ink and pouring the concrete. So even though the shift that we feel perhaps as a collective is a little bit uncertain and causing some waves, and we watch the political debates and we watch the continual download about impeachments, and we watch the continual download from the environmental pieces, and we just get fearful in our hearts of what is possibly going forward in this future. But I feel what is really lining up, even though there's a swish and the boat is rocking and we're hanging on right now, is this pathway is being carved for smoother sailing, and we just need to become very dedicated and disciplined and determined sailors at this point, and not let ourselves get seasick, not let ourselves be thrown overboard with propaganda and false news and fear, fear, fear. Stay strong, stay to the center, hold to the mast, and it will upright itself, because the natural flow of the universe is to right itself, just like the body. I was so blown away at how quickly my body repaired itself, because all the cells in our body, all of our organs, all of the blood, the white blood cells are constantly fighting to make things right. And as the Hermetic principle goes, as above, so below, as within, so around. And so if it's going on the microcosm of our own physical bodies trying to right itself, so is the great universe trying to right itself. And just trust at this point. A big piece of Jupiter's energy is trust. He's trust. He's trust. And that's very hard when we're facing fear. But I turn to Pema Chodron, the great American Tibetan Buddhist monk who's written prolifically. Most recently, one of her books is Welcoming the Unwelcome. But this quote that she says is from one of her first books, When Things Fall Apart. And she talks about this warrior girl who is going out to battle, and she doesn't really want to go out to battle. In fact, if you're familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, it's much like Arjuna and Krishna. But she says, no, you must go. You must face this opponent. And she said, well, who is my opponent? And the teacher said, well, it's fear. You're going to fight fear. And then, of course, she was sickened because fear is fearful. And she decided, okay, I'm going to go out on the battlefield. And she stopped and said, I am ready to battle you, fear. And fear said, oh, I appreciate your respect. And she said, tell me, what are your weapons? And fear said, well, I get really close to your face and I talk very fast. And then fear said, but you can listen to what I have to say, but don't do what I tell you to do, and you will defeat me. And that's exactly what she did. Don't do what the fears tell you to do. You can have a healthy respect for your fears. You can even hear what they have to say, but just don't do what they tell you to do. And that's so much of the Jupiter and Venus energy conjunct right now at this time in that galactic center. It's telling us to be strong in our heart. Venus is love. Be big and strong in your heart. Jupiter's that big and strong.
Nice sum.
Thanks.
Well, I think that's a good stopping point for our discussion of this cycle. We're going, well, I guess November 24th, we backed up a few days, and then all the way through the full moon, which will be on December 11th in Gemini. What's our theme one last time for the peeps?
Put it in ink and pour the concrete.
Awesome. If you're around today, this Sunday, November 24th, come to Karma Yoga Center for our workshop called
Counting Your Blessings. And it's all about Venus and Jupiter. We're going to be doing it on its great day. So come in. We'll have a discussion on how to look at your chart and be able to identify areas where there's potential for boon, and where there's a lot of abundance and prosperity, and how you can help to harvest some of that energy. And then also, if you'd like to join us right after Thanksgiving, come down to Manitou Springs. We're going on retreat at Sunwater and Sun Mountain. We're going to soak and hike Garden of the Gods, and we're going to do a lot of meditation, look at some astrology. We've got all kinds of fun things like making a medicine shield, ready for that big weekend. And we have room for just a couple more, so we'd love to have you, and you can look at the links below for that information.
Great. Thank you, yogis, and namaste.
Namaste.